The world is facing a lot of problems like poverty, disease, famine, etc. But one of the problem that is most pressing and urgent is climate change. Over the years, we can see the effect of the climate change on the globe, like flooding of the Germany and heat waves of the Europe and London. At this point, the world has reached an uncontrollable position. At COP26, we have got the net zero project. The solution in this project is given is very Western centric. The project revolves around the corporations and speculative uh, technologies. The same corporation and leaders who are created this problem. With these types of action, we can only expect that the climate change will only deteriorate. When their utopian idea fail to bring any changes, they will support the technocratic idea of geoengineering, where they will start planet altering engineering projects, like they will try to manipulate the natural environment and alter it for the temporary alleviation of the problem. A leader of the geoengineering candidate, financed by Bill Gates, proposed a plan to spray particles in the air so can he deflect the sun rays from the atmosphere. These dangerous and unalterable ideas led to the uncontrollable climate catastrophe and permanent destruction of the life from this planet. In spite of these concerns, geoengineering is being get discussed in UN meeting, with publications such as The Economist predicting that since it wouldn't disturb the continuous economic growth, it's more likely to be implemented than the drastic blind cut in emission that would head off climate disaster. Report published by Carbon Disclosure Project CDP since 1998, a mere 100 companies in the world have been responsible for 71% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. It is no surprise that the mix of companies listed is mainly dominated by fossil fuel industry. With capitalism, insatiable greed for profit making, reckless production of needless commodities has been inflated in the market for decades. Capitalism has prospered for centuries by exploiting nature as either an inexhaustible supply of resources to produce commodities or as a waste dump. But Earth's ability to endure this destructive process of capital is reached its limit. Capitalists' need for constant growth has led to the interruption of the complex nature of cycle that took millions of years to develop. This created a rift in metabolism, borrowing Marx's terms, between society and nature. Climate change and the crisis of cycle of carbon, water, phosphorus, nitrogen, the acidification of the ocean, the acceleration of loss of biodiversity, the change in quality of soil and chemical polluted by industry. These are some terrible expression of complete unprecedented situation for humanity, namely the tendency towards the destruction of our natural contradiction of production and reproduction. This destructive tendency is directly related to the social and material deprivation of hundreds of millions of people who suffered misery, unemployment, and precarious employment, which capitalism needs to ensure the profitability and reproduction. Over the years, the faced with the impending doom of this planet in UN and imperialist countries, a Green New Deal and UN Agenda 2020 was proposed. It is also accepted by so called progressives around the globe, but both this new Green Deal and similar proposals, which are reference point of many progressive forces around the planet, based on the idea of sustainable capitalism is possible and the corporation that created this crisis can become the savior of this planet. But the illusion that contradiction between the capitalist interest and environmental preservation affecting the millions of people can be resolved is utopian and reactionary. Capitalist mode of production is total contradiction with the nature and progressive development. For capitalism, determining factor of this progress is merely quantitative. The forces competing with each other, capitalism seeks the way to replace workers with the machine to increase the productivity and labor and the mass goods thrown into the market. This increases the amount of natural resources needed to produce them. The constant repetition of production and reproduction of the capital, ruthlessly eating up all resources without taking an account the time required for natural production and reproduction. The cause of this type of environmental destructive development rather than the capitalist irrationality, it is inherent logic, it is logical result of an economic system which engages the capitalist for thirst for profit. Faced with capitalism's absolute irrational perspective, the need for drastic and urgent measure is evident, but these cannot be depend on goodwill of the governments of the imperialist power that are the principal and responsible for the current disaster, nor can they depend on the new agenda of these corporations and bourgeoisie parties of green capitalism. The only solution of the catastrophe that threatened us is to take the present and future into our hands by subjecting the world economy into the rational plan, or, as a Marxist said, the introduction of reason into the sphere of economy. This will only be possible if the economy can be in the hands of the working class. Workers have all the interest needed to prevent this catastrophe happening. We, as organizers that fight for the proletariat, build up the momentum among the youths and inside the environmental movements, facing with these summits of international movement and green capitalism. We might fight for traditional program aim from establish a complete rational ecological reorganization of production, distribution and consumption so that we can live in this planet. Thank you. Long live the revolution.